Good evening, everyone. I hope everything is good and fine from your end. Okay, this is also a rather interesting and unusual video, but this video is nevertheless, quite important and necessary in the context of our present day and time, particularly from the point of view of India. Okay, the title of this video, if you have not yet guessed it right, is why we need an interdisciplinary and a cross-cultural approach in order to bring Indology to the 21st century. Okay, this is an extremely important issue because most of the concepts in Indology are obsolete and date back to the 19th century. Okay, let us begin this video by defining and discussing, debating what Indology is. Indology refers to the study of ancient India. There is a canonical and traditional and conventional view of what Indology is. It has been straitjacketed into a study of ancient India mostly and not contemporary India. However, we can expand the definition and concept of Indology to include more contemporary studies also. That may be the need of the day and hour. However, we need a larger number of specialists to take this forward and specialize in different aspects of study in India. Okay, let us now define in brief and explain in brief what is studied in Indology. As a part and parcel of Indology, several languages are studied, okay, such as Sanskrit, Pali, Tamil, etc. And modern Indian languages like Hindi, Telugu, Kannada, Gujarati, except Tamil, are not studied, Bengali. And as a part of studies of literature, Sanskrit literature, Buddhist literature, and poetry and hymns are all studies, especially Rig Veda and Vedic studies are people. And Michael Witzel has started an electronic journal of Vedic study, EJVS, but he's still obsolete in many ways. And if you look at religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and other Dharmic religions are also studied. Sikhism, unfortunately, is not that widely studied. It's a more recent offshoot of Hinduism. Okay, and the history of India is also studied in great detail, particularly in Vedic period, Indus Valley civilization. However, this is studied in an extremely old format and obsolete format. Okay, if you look at the culture of India, the culture of India is also studied, including beliefs, ideas, customs, taboos, codes, institutions, rituals, and ceremonies. Okay, where exactly is Indology studied? Indology studied in universities mostly in continental Europe and Germany. Germany was the place where it was largely born, but it studies in other parts of Europe also, including England, much less so in France, Italy, and other countries. Some of these institutes have been closing down, rather unfortunately, because they're stuck in an old format and they are highly obsolete in many ways. Okay. In Western academics, Indology is most commonly known as Indian or South Asian studies. I do not believe in the term South Asian. Why should we call China East Asia, and why should we call Greece Southeastern Europe and Egypt Northeastern Europe, etc.? It not doesn't make sense. Now, if we trace the history of Indology, it is attributed to Sir William Jones of Calcutta. He is credited with founding Indology in the year 1784. He established the Asiatic Society of Bengal and instituted departments of basket and Indology. He also famously pointed out the differences, pointed out the similarities between Sanskrit and Greek and Latin. Okay, and Filippo Sassetti also much earlier had pointed out some similarities, and many of these people laid the foundations for modern Indology in some way or other. And earlier to that, Abu Rayhan Muhammad ibn Ahmad al Biruni is considered to be one of the founders of Indology. He was a Persian scholar who studied many sciences such as astronomy, mathematics, and physics. Al Biruni is known for his detailed descriptions of 18th and 11th century India. He wrote a book called Tariq al Hind, which is the study of the history of India. This is on his travels all across India in the 11th century. Okay, even prior to this, the famous eminent Greek historian Megasthenes came to India during the reign of Chandragupta Maurya. He visited India between around 302 BC and 288 BC, 14 years. Megasthenes, we may say, was also a diplomat and an ethnographer, and was the ambassador of Seleucus Nicator I and came to visit Chandragupta Maurya. And he wrote a book, which is a famous book, which is called Indica. However, this book has not survived the passage of time. Okay, it has not survived the passage of time, and it's mostly lost, with the exception of small fragments. What are the problems with Indology? There are many criticisms of Indology because first thing is Indologists are mostly Europeans. They're white centric and European centric. They studied India from mostly from a Western colonial perspective. Their interpretations of Indian culture were mostly shaped by colonial attitudes. They believed Indian culture to be inferior to Western culture, and many of the famous and eminent Indologists such as Max Muller also never set foot on Indian soil. They did some helicopter research, and cross-cultural research strategies were never employed. Ethnic connective perspectives were never employed, and they fell prey to obsolete term definitions of the term Aryan and Dravidian. Okay, and many of the so-called Indologists, of which are handful, this is steadily declining and retreating number. If you see Michael Witzel, born in 1943, is a German-American philologist, comparative mythologist, and he's also an Indologist. He's the Wales Professor of Sanskrit at Harvard University, and he's the editor of the Harvard Orientals series. He has researched the Vedas extensively, so far and so good. He studied Indology under Paul Thiem, H.P. Schmidt, Hoffman, Norton, and as well as Natal. He's also interested very much in Nepal because he had studied there. Okay, he is associated with the 19th century school of Indology and he has connections to German Indology, which is obsolete. Again, Steve Farmer doesn't have much of knowledge of India. His technical expertise is also doubtful and he's Vincent's collaborator. And Richard Spoth also is Vincent's collaborator. All these are Eurocentric in some way or other. They may not have that much detailed knowledge of India. And if you see Gregory person whom I had interacted with, unfortunately, in a brief interaction, so it's highly fueled by Kyrgyzism, a little bit of intellectual arrogance, as he relies heavily on mid 19th century school of Indology, even though he's not a part and parcel of it. Okay, he's an expert of the Indus Valley civilization, not on the whole of India, and has looked down upon Indian collaborators here rather condescendingly, superciliously, and did not adopt true cross-cultural scholarship. Okay, if you see Asko Parpola again driven by Kyrgyzism like his brother Simo Parpola, both of them are interested in ancient scripts, but again in an obsolete format. He is associated with the mid-century school of Indology, doesn't have real knowledge of India. He collaborated only with Iravada Mahadevan, who's a Dravidian nationalist. So we have a large number of ghosts from the past. An incomplete list of the ghosts of the past, whether Indian or Western, is given as follows. First thing is so-called Indo-Iranian language script, which is purported to have taken place in the year 1500 BC. Could not have been due to transhumance movements, but only due to contacts between West Asia and Iran and India, Persia, and the cessation of this contact. They yet to be reconciled with the Kurgan hypothesis, BMSC hypothesis, it is, I mean, both the Kurgan hypothesis and the BMSC hypothesis still say different things. Still, Witzel is convinced about it. The rural and bucolic post-Harappan hypothesis, it has not been consistent with archaeological data available for 40 years. Okay, and many people, observations by many scholars and researchers have written against it. Okay, because there was a transfer of populations from the Indus Valley to Ganga Yamuna Dove in 1900 BC due to the drying up of the Saraswati or the Gagraha River. Of course, it doesn't prove the Indus Valley civilization was Vedic. Even Indus or Sindhu is mentioned in Veda. Okay, initially, Western scholars bestowed upon the Gangetic place lavish heaps on Genconiums. They called it the mother birth place of every science and every technology. However, they called it Western Indology departments were called Benares and Bahrain. However, suddenly it was dumped in favor of Mortimer Wheeler's Dark Age hypothesis. Okay. Again, the notion of early second millennium migrations, 2000 BC to 1500 BC is absurd. Okay. The idea that the Aryans within double quotes lived in the Punjab is absurd because Aryavata equates to Gangetic Valley. They don't know much. They have very little idea of India. Unfortunately, many Western researchers, even the average man on the street, will know better. The illiterate post-Harappan India hypothesis is absurd because there was limited literacy in the Gangetic Valley. I have traced the origin of the Brahmi script. Okay, imbalanced coverage. Marxist historians are preoccupied with the Islamic period. They look down upon the Hindu period. Okay, there is some kind of implied communalism, whether conscious or unconscious or intentional or deliberate or non-deliberate, arguing against the Vedic carbon equation using all the wrong reasons. Okay, again, India-specific approaches were never formulated. Okay, and they have not tried to look at India as one entity across regions and periods. And it was a heavily archaeologically focused approach. Bones alone cannot write India's history. Bones and bricks cannot write India's history. India has a soul, it has a heart like every other country, nation on earth. So, Marxist historians also did not challenge colonial ideologies adequately. That is why I call it the colonial Marxist imperialist school of Indology. Some people actually took comfort and solace in the 19th century school of Indology and its paradigms. Hindutva and other groups came in only much later. There are many ideologies in Indology. For example, we have the ideology of Dravidian nationalism, which evolved in the present day Tamil Nadu in the 19th century. This was popularized by movements that contended that South Indians or Dravidian people formed a racial and cultural identity that was distinct from other people in India, particularly North Indians. They also believed that North Indians and the Brahmins were upper caste Hindus, were North Indians or were interlopers, and Indians, particularly Tamils and Dravidians, so-called Dravidians, which is only a language group, were autochthonous or indigenous to the region. Okay, it's again based on obsolete colonial historical models. And we also had British and German Indology. There are differences between the two. British had their own colonial motives. Some Indologies were seen to be handmaidens of the British colonial administrators. For example, as Stanley Baldwin, the former Prime Minister, said, ages and ages ago they sat side by side, the ancestors of English Rajputs and Brahmins. Now, after ages, it has used to justify British imperialism and colonialism and ethnocentrism and Eurocentrism. Okay, and missionaries such as John Muir and J. Wilson also supported the idea that the Aborigines were indigenous to India and the upper caste were invaders. Okay, thus likewise Frederick W. Farrar argued that it was the duty of the British to convert Indians, particularly the upper castes, into Christianity. Okay, and Jyotiba Phule likewise felt that Brahmins and other upper castes were interlopers and invaders, and some of them supported the obsolete and now discarded Aryan invasion theory, which is also outdated. Anyway, there is no point whipping or beating a big dead horse. Anyway, it is obsolete, dead and gone. Okay, and the Germans also contributed while contributing to India in a great way, positive way. They also were one of the first two people to try to study India with from the prism of a scientific from a scientific perspective. However, they may have failed partly, if not fully, because they had their own Eurocentric bias. They looked at it with tinted glasses, and Indians also may have had their own shares of follies and made their shares on follies and pitfalls because Indians already did not have the scientific temper. Only now it is improving. Okay, again, Douglas T. Mark Hitchkin points out the different motives between German and British researchers. Germans wanted to show that Aryans, within quotes, were distinct from the Indus Valley civilization. That's why Witzel and other people may have proposed that the Indus Valley civilization was Parabunga. Okay, they also wanted to show that Aryans, within quotes, were superior to Harappans and other people. Okay, and we also had Dalit nationalism. It's a mass struggle for justice against the caste system. The movement uses cultural organizations, speeches, songs, dramas, literary work to fight for justice. Even though the Dalit movement went global, it has come back to India, and it straddles two geographies and nationalities. Okay, and it leads to a new category of national identification apart from pan ideal views promoted by Hindutva, if not monolithic ones. And they also have fought for reservations and affirmative action. And the Dalit leaders such as B.R. Ambedkar and others have also had a major role to play in raising Hindutva, I mean Dalit consciousness. Hindutva, interestingly, even though it is around 100 years old or even more than that, it started playing a major role in national affairs only around 20, 30 years ago, mostly in the 90s. They also have their own set of laws. They are mostly preoccupied with Aryan indigenousness, autochthonousness, mostly preoccupied with claiming that Vedic culture is equated with the Indus Valley civilization or even older than that. Okay, this is not possible because there is outside the Aryavata. It also disappeared in 1300 BC and declined in 1900 BC. Sanskrit was a liturgical language, not a language of the masses. And objects also don't marry. Then again, if you see all of Hinduism or Indian religious traditions are Vedic, there are also a lot of other traditions, religious traditions that we need to take into account. Okay, I have written on this paper why Dravidian Vedic and Paramunda Indus theories are not tenable. Okay, please read this paper. And for us to proceed further, we need international collaboration so that biases and prejudices are eliminated through discourse debate. Okay, we need cross-cultural research design. People from different cultural perspectives must talk to each other. This is necessary to prevent bias. I've written about this extensively. We need interdisciplinary approaches, and these relate to application of concepts drawn from more than one branch of knowledge, transdisciplinary approaches. Okay, as of now, there is very little contribution to Indology from anthropologists and from sociologists, other less people, etc. With the exception of minor exceptions of studying the caste, that is again not and it doesn't represent Hinduism in its entirety. Again, the models used, historical models used to study Hinduism or Indian religious traditions are hopelessly antiquated and outdated. Okay, and of course, even in the Indus Valley civilization, so many other cultures contributed to Hinduism. It's just a geographical expression. Anything other than what came from outside, just like Buddhism, sorry, just like Islam and Christianity is a form of Hinduism. Even Buddha, very difficult to distinguish between Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. They're all Western, what do you say, interpretations. Okay, we also need better integration with world history. IVC was connected with other old world civilizations and all these studies civilizations need to be studied together. We had the early Argonauts from ancient India who went globe-trotting, as it were, at least the known part of the world that was known to them, they went globe-trotting. And Indians were never inward-looking. Even the Gangetic Plains was connected with West Asia. Inward-looking ideals came in later. Okay, and it played a major role in the compilation of Rig Veda because our West and Rig Veda are known to be interrelated. We therefore need a radical overhaul in Indology. We need to focus particularly on the Gangetic places. That's the heart and soul of Indian culture. Even South Indian culture was borrowed heavily from there. There were, of course, large Buddhist settlements in the Gangetic plains. The theory of bucolic society and peripatetic Aryans is obsolete. We had the scholars such as Piotr Andreevich Elsov, Hermann Kulke and Dietmar Roterman, Frank Raymond Alchin, George Adosi, Edwin Bryant, Jim Schaefer, and others also contributed heavily to that. Also, read my work, The Demise of the Dravidian, Vedic, and Paramount Indus Myths. Indus Valley civilization was most probably multilingual. They're Near Eastern. They spoke remote many languages, which included remote languages that were ancestors of the Levanchi later practice of the Gangetic Plains. That is my hypothesis. I think that many people have supported this directly. A large number of people have supported. It's not just me, and I've given the reasons clearly for this. If you want to contradict me or justify your own theory, you are more than welcome. Please write to me. Thank you very much once again. Bye.